In the last movie, we saw how to use PHP to encode special characters for use in a URL. There's one other place where we have to watch out for reserved characters, and that's in our HTML. Most of the time, we have total control of what HTML goes on the page. We simply write it in our code. But once we start building pages which use dynamic data, we're going to be inserting data that may come from the user, from the database, from cookies, or from other resources. And we must take care that when we do that, we don't lose control of the HTML at the same time. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say that we have a value for someone's username. Maybe this is a value that we pull out of the database or from a cookie or somewhere, but we get this value for their username. And somewhere on our HTML page, we're going to output that value. It's a dynamic value. Now, if the username is simply Kevin, then this will work as expected and there won't be a problem. But what if one of our users decides to get clever and they change their username to include some HTML tags? Maybe they just put strong tags around it, so now their name shows up nice and bold, stands out from everyone else's. Or what if they decide to put strong tags, but they screw up and they forget to put the closing strong tag? Now, potentially a lot of our website may be in bold, not just the part they intended, but everything that comes after it. Or what if they decide to monkey around with some of the other tags? Imagine if you were to drop this username up into that string at the top. We'd have div ID equals name, and then it would be Kevin, and then it would close the div. And then we'd have another closing div tag. So that's presumably closing a div that was further up in my HTML. That could break our layout. So we're losing control over our HTML and the formatting because we're allowing HTML to be inside these strings. And as soon as it gets dropped onto the page by PHP, it's considered valid HTML, and it is executed by the browser. The solution to this problem is to watch out for reserved characters in the HTML. There's special characters that have special power, and there are four principal ones. There's the less than sign, the greater than sign, the ampersand, and the double quote. These are the ones that we want to watch out for, primarily the less than and the greater than, because those indicate the beginning of ending of HTML tags. So what we want to do is we want to do the same thing we did with URLs. We want to encode those into a harmless equivalent. And HTML provides character entities that begin with the ampersand sign that do exactly that. So you can see we have ampersand LT semicolon, which is an equivalent for the less than sign. If we use ampersand LT semicolon, it will display to the user and look like a less than sign, but it won't be considered the opening of an HTML tag. It's not a powerful character, it's just text at that point. And that's true for all four of these. The way that we get this encoding is by using a PHP function called HTML special chars, short for characters. So HTML special characters will take those HTML characters and convert them to their harmless HTML entity equivalents. Now, it's not just HTML that we have to watch out for, because JavaScript also uses these same things, and cross-site scripting is a major security concern. If you're not familiar with cross-site scripting, let me explain it briefly. It's called XSS for short a lot of times, and the idea is that an attacker tricks a web page into outputting JavaScript on the page. And if they can do that, just like we had HTML output on the page, the browser just sees it as being code that was returned to them by the PHP. And the browser trusts it, it thinks it's JavaScript you must have meant to send to them, and so it executes it. It's a major security vulnerability because an attacker could put all sorts of nasty stuff inside that JavaScript that gets executed. Let me demonstrate. So I'm going to go to the site that we've already created. I'm going to go to our subjects, and I'm going to click on any one of these subjects. I'll click on the small business. You'll see it says ID equals 3. And you'll remember that it just echoes back that value that it gets. It just takes the value that it gets from up here and it outputs it on the page. Well, now let's try changing this a little bit. Let's try first just doing strong tags around it. Look at that. It turned strong. It considered it to be HTML. If we view the source here, you'll see that the strong tags are present on this page. Now let's try a cross-site scripting attack. We're going to change this to be JavaScript tags instead, script, and let's put in some JavaScript here. Instead of 3, let's put in an alert. Gotcha. Now this JavaScript here is really simple. It's just going to pop up an alert box, but it's a basic stand-in for any JavaScript. Anything that JavaScript is capable of doing, including loading scripts from remote websites, reading your cookies, all that stuff that's possible in JavaScript, That can all be done here. I'm just doing a simple placeholder. Now let's hit return and load this page and see what we get back. Look at that. It ran JavaScript script. It popped up with an alert and says, gotcha. Once I say OK, now we go to the rest of the page. If we actually do a view source on this, let's go down here to see the page source. You'll see the JavaScript just got dropped right in. It just dropped the JavaScript on the page. And our browser didn't know that this was JavaScript that shouldn't be there. It just saw it as JavaScript that came back. So this is called cross-site scripting. And that's one of the major things that we want to try and prevent in our code. And the way we do that is that anytime we're using dynamic data, so on our show page, for example, we're using dynamic data here. We want to make sure that when we output that dynamic data, that we use HTML special chars on it. Now we're going to be doing that a lot. And because we're going to be doing a lot, it's a pain to have to type this whole long thing every single time. So one technique that I use in order to make it easier is the same thing we did over here. I create a new function and I just call it H. There we go. And it's just going to return back HTML special chars on the string. That's it. It's just a shortcut. We can just use H instead in order to escape it. So let's come back over here. We'll change it to H. We know what that's doing behind the scenes. It's calling that HTML special chars function. And let's save it. Let's go back and let's reload our page. So we still got our same script up here. I'm going to hit return. And look at that. The script didn't execute this time. We still see it, but that's because it rendered it into harmless text. Once again, we'll go up here, web developer to page source. Now look, it turned it into and LT semicolon script and GT semicolon. Those get output as text. They're no longer powerful characters. So once you understand the concept and you understand why you need it, it's very simple to do it. The trick is in making sure you do it each and every time you're rendering data which comes from the user, from the database, from a cookie, from anywhere that's dynamic data. You want to escape it first to make sure that it doesn't have any powerful HTML characters in it.